Hello and welcome back to my writing advice channel. I'm JC Bybee. I am an indie author with 8 books out in print, and I am here to help people, writers, aspiring writers, writers looking to get a different take on things. I will give videos, lectures, rants, discussions on various topics. World building, characterization, plot arcs, even things down to the nitty gritty like how do I keep myself organized. My first book, I wanted to feature it since I didn't last time, is Hero Unit. It is available in print and on ebook. It is based in our world, in the near future, where there are people, and have been for a while, who have superpowers. And in this world and in this society, they decided, at least in the United States, to create a superpowered police force that helps protect both the normal people that don't have superpowers and the people with superpowers from those that would abuse them. Currently, there are 5 books out in the series, all available, like I said, on print, in print, and on ebook through my website, which I will have linked down below. Also, I'll have links to my Patreon, where you can find an exclusive story that's only available there. And without further ado, we will get into today's lecture, World Building, Part 2. So, last time in World Building, we talked about core concept, using a what-if statement, how far do you take it? So, now that we've gone over sort of the broad concepts of world building, we're going to go into how do you show it? How do you take all of that stuff that you've got notes on and books and notebooks full of and ideas for and, entries in your outline? How do you take all of that information and show it to your readers? Well, first off, don't try to show everything that you've researched. One of the big mistakes you can make is trying to take every single aspect of your world building, all of it, top to bottom, and try to cram it into your book. First off, doesn't really work. You will end up with blocks of text that describe things that most readers are going to skip, to be perfectly honest. In my writers group, I talk about, we got to a scene where our good buddy Tyler submitted a scene that Gray and I, we hate those kind of scenes. And I told Tyler outright, this is a well-written version of a scene that I will read the first time, maybe the second time I read the book, and I will skip it every other time. Because there are just some things that I, as the reader, I am not interested in. And when it comes to world building, especially, there are aspects that people don't want to read. They don't care about, they're not going to listen to it. Or read it, as it were. And so instead of trying to cram everything in there, what you want to do is you want to convey the important points that help develop the world, help develop your characters, and help develop your plot. Everything should be in service to the plot. So, step 1. Descriptions. What kind of clothes do people wear? This one is especially important for fantasy and science fiction. Contemporary, it's less important, but still can be used. Clothing is a big one. If you describe tunics instead of shirts, or you say pants instead of trousers, or breeches instead of pants, or if you say jeans instead of anything else, it all develops an idea of what the world looks like. Food is another great one. Food helps define so many aspects of a culture and of a world, of a region. In our day and age, with how global the world is becoming and how you get people who grew up in one place, move somewhere else, they bring their traditions and their cuisine with them, we're starting to get more of a mix. But in the past, or maybe even in the future, how and what people eat will change and does change according to what is available. Cultures in the past ate what they had available, not what they wanted to eat necessarily. Part of the reason I couldn't have survived in the past is I'm a picky eater at times. So it's something to consider. I always reference back in my other video, I reference back to the Telvanna Mysteries and how Grant's Crossing, the major city that it takes place in, is a port city. So there's a lot of fishing and a lot of seafood in their cuisine. Another way you can do it is nature, and we're going to go more into that a little bit further down, so I'm not going to hit on environment too heavily. But plants and animals can really help develop your reader's idea of what your world is like, even in an urban setting, because there are animals in urban environments. And then technology. Technology is one that really helps shape not only your reader's view of the world, but the expectations they may or may not have for that world. Again, going back to my writers group, we have Gray, who is writing a fantasy novel, and in it, at first, he was using terminology like rifles and pistols, and as he was writing it, he determined that that was too far up the technological ladder. He didn't want that. He didn't want he wanted firearms. He didn't want them that far up the technological ladder, so he stepped it back. And so we talked about how and what, and how far back did he want to take it? How far up did he want to take it? That way he established the world and the idea and the technology that he wanted to convey, so the magic could have a more interesting interaction. You get into sci-fi, and you can really start developing, well, depending on hard or soft sci-fi. I mean, a lot of people, when they think sci-fi, they think the Star Trek and Star Trek: The Next Generation with their, especially Next Generation that I can think of in Deep Space Nine. They had the food replicators, where they walk up to a computer and say, "Hey, I want this," and it would get them for them. I can't even begin to fathom what kind of technology that would take, but it helps emphasize the kind of society that has developed where food scarcity within the Federation, at least, was probably not a thing. And when they would encounter societies where maybe food scarcity was a problem, that could develop into a storyline. And so technology can not only set up your world, but it can also help inform your plot lines, your storylines. The emergence of firearms versus magic. I love L.E. Modesitt's The Magic of Recluse series, or Recluse. Anyway, I was introduced, it was Magic of Recluse, but anyway. In that world, in that series, gunpowder exists, but it can be a liability because of chaos magic, and chaos magic can set off the gunpowder if you don't have it stored properly. It's been a long time since I've read it, so I don't remember all the finer details. But it's one of those things that really stood out to me as how can advancing technology not necessarily be an advantage to your characters, to your world, to your society. So that's something to take into consideration. Dialogue. Dialogue is a big one for me. I get really hung up, and it's a pet peeve of mine, when you are ostensibly in a medieval setting and you use very clearly modern language, modern slang, modern swears, whatever. It really throws me out of the narrative, and it probably throws a lot of readers out of the narrative, because you've got this setting that speaks to a certain style of speaking, and you're not using that style of speaking. Now, if you're doing a fish out of water time traveler story, that's a different kettle of fish entirely. Your character is going to be saying things, because in modern English we thrive off of idioms. They're going to be saying things that people, if they even understand them back in the day, will have no idea what they mean, what they're talking about. So this is something that really, especially if you're doing fantasy or sci-fi, you really need to take into consideration, because language changes how your reader perceives the world. How your characters talk and interact via dialogue is going to inform your reader in the kind of world they're getting into. Something on my camera, I'm a little high up. There we go. Okay. I'm so professional, I know. And then language stratification. This is one that doesn't always get as much attention. How stratified is your language? And when I say that, I mean, do people that are, quote, blue collar or common or peasant or serf speak a rougher dialect than those that are noble, those that are educated, those that are scientists? I mean, you could do language stratification in sci-fi, because if you're exploring space, you have engineers, you have scientists, you have crew. They could all speak a common language, but still use terms and descriptions and words that don't make sense or are harder for one group or another to understand. And this goes both up and down, or one side to the other, because language changes based off of education, based off of environment, based off of upbringing, based off of religion. So when you are creating your world, when you are writing your world, when you are making your terminology, be cognizant of the fact that you have to be careful with the words you choose, not only on the page, but in the words that are spoken by your characters. When your characters are speaking, when they're talking, when they're interacting, you are building more of the world than a lot of people think, because you are setting concepts, you are setting ideas into people's heads about what your characters might even look like, how much education they might have, how much they know about the broader world, about the political situation. I love the way in Robert Jordan's Eye of the World, when we get into this tiny little isolated town, the very beginning of the book, they talk about Aes Sedai and warders as these mythical things. They talk about warders wearing armor made of gold and jewels and always fighting in the blight, and all of these things. And then they actually, because they have such a fixed idea of what they're supposed to look like, and spoiler alert for a, I don't know, 30-plus-year-old book, when they actually meet an Aes Sedai and a warder, they don't recognize them because they don't fit the stories they've been told. So that is how language, how culture, how society can shape the narrative and build the story. So it's something to be, and again, not everybody is writing something like The Wheel of Time. That's not the case. I do recommend it. Like I said in my last video, I do recommend that you at least read the first book, just to get an idea of how a world can be set up in really a great way. And I will be the first to admit The Wheel of Time is not for everybody. Not even for every fantasy reader. But to put it aside and not study it for its worth as a writer, I think is a mistake. All right, last topic for today, environment. What kind of world are we looking at? And I apparently didn't. Yeah, that's all right. That says plants down there at the bottom. We'll get to that. What kind of world are we looking at? How dangerous is it? I like using, for example, my two series, Hero Unit and the Ravana Mysteries. Hero Unit is set on an alternate Earth, near future, so it's only slightly ahead of us. But there's a crowning event. I say crowning event. I shouldn't say crowning event. There is a pivotal event called the Exceptionals War, where billions of people died. And that has shaped society based off of that. in the Telvanna Mysteries, this world has existed for, I think it's about 15,000 years. And they've gone through 4 major dynastic upheavals that have caused untold amounts of grief. And instead of the races being these monoliths of culture and society, they're not, because in between these dynastic collapses, you clung to whoever was near you to survive. One of the things, I've never actually addressed it in the book, but historically, after one of the dynastic collapses, the orcs and the dwarves teamed up and survived together, or at least a group of them. So they have a different relationship than, say, dwarves and humans, dwarves and elves, dwarves and other races. And again, I'm not using the Tolkien-esque approach to things where orcs were created. Well, orcs were twisted elves. They're a created race anyway. We'll talk about pantheons and religions and other things later. It's an important thing to consider, whether you have it or don't. So, something to keep on mind, but we'll talk about that one in a different video. We're getting close to too long on this one already. So, I'll reference my group member Gray, his book, his world, the place that it's taking place in. He is established as a dangerous place, and because it's dangerous, the societal age has lowered. People are younger than what we would expect, simply because survival is hard. And that's something that you as a writer can take into consideration. And you don't have to state it explicitly. Again, we'll get into more of the show, not tell stuff later, which is a rough piece of advice if you don't. Anyway. And then what kind of animals, what kind of plants are we looking at? What kind of flora, fauna are we looking at? You know, plains, forests, mountains, desert, aquatic. All of these things are things that you can use to build the world as a part of the storytelling. Again, you want to avoid these big text blocks of this is what this is what this is, because people aren't going to read them. But if you can make it a natural part of the flow of the story, like they're going down a rough dirt road that has with wagon ruts in it, that's well traveled but narrow, so it's small, crowded around on every side by trees, but kept back because of the constant passage of wagons. You've already established various things with that single line, that single bit of description, and it's moving the narrative forward because it is telling you that it's telling your readers that something is happening. And when something is happening, they want to keep reading. And if they want to keep reading, they're going to finish a book and hopefully buy your next one. So world building is so important that I understand why people get kind of paralyzed by it. You can't let fear of not having enough or putting too much in get in your way. The big advice I will give you is make sure you have a good developmental editor, and 2, make sure you can find yourself a writers group. And for more advice on that, shameless plug here, my writers group, we do a podcast called Third Person POV. It's available here on YouTube at Third Person POV POD. It's also available on other podcasting platforms. And we have an episode where we talk about finding a writers group. We have an episode where we talk about finding an editor and what an editor is and what their importance in the process. Anyway, that'll do it for this particular lecture. Thanks for stopping by. I appreciate you guys coming and listening. Again, if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. I can hopefully try to get to them and answer them in later episodes. I appreciate you staying in. Remember, like, subscribe, share, let people know I'm here. I really appreciate it. Like I said, my website will be linked down below, along with my Patreon. And I think that's it, so I'll see you next time.